Today, we break down the best and worst performances from week number 11 of college football. Let's get right into this. Those of y'all who've been asking about Rookie Watch ended up taking last week off, and I'm actually re-gearing up this week to look over both weeks number 9 and 10 in NFL. So get excited for that. We're going to be probably doing that sometime later this week. If the video doesn't come out, it is going to be on the Patreon on the sheet. So if you guys have not already done so, go check that out. Also, this stock report is only the best and worst performers, not the winners and the full losers. That's over on the Patreon as well, where I have over 90 players usually per week. So let's get into this. It takes a lot of the guessing work out for you guys, a lot of the research, but starting out with our superstar of the week, there are 5 of them. We have Philip Dunham, defensive back from UCF. I know a lot of you guys have been saying, hey, can you put like certain things on here, the year, the corner, like the position, and I just don't want to get this too crowded. Sometimes simplicity's here. That's kind of like a good thing. So I'm going to do my best to kind of just explain exactly their situation. Philip is in his final year of eligibility, and he also is a defensive back, so safety. But 92 defensive grade this past week, a defensive stop, targeted 5 times, allowing 2 completions for 31 yards and 3 interceptions. What a game. I mean, you guys know me. I love UCF, and Malachi Lawrence is obviously a big guy there. Nigel Kelly. So a huge fan of those guys. Obviously last year, Lee Hunter, Mac McWilliams was a huge my guy last year. Even BJ Adams was a huge fan of him too. So there's just a lot of talent on this defense in this defensive program that I am a huge fan of. And this is another player that I'm gonna have to check out because he is not ended up being somebody that I've really seen. But also UCF all-22 tape is very scarce this year. Hence why I haven't regraded Malachi Lawrence. But regardless, Philip Dunham, fantastic performance. This is not to ramble off and talk too much about UCF. But next, Antoine Raymond, running back for Rutgers. What a baller. Not even draft eligible. He ended up having 41 carries for 240 yards and a touchdown. But here's the kicker. First off, great performance on the ground. 18 missed tackles forced. Also targeted 1 time, did not get the reception on that. But 18 missed tackles forced. I love seeing that. I mean, on such a big workload to have a near 50% missed tackle rate, love it. Good build as well, 5'11", 205, being the guy who succeeds. Probably one of the hottest steals in the NFL draft right now, Kyle Monangai. RB5 for me coming out of the draft. Big fan of that. Rutgers program has been churning and burning. Now we got David Bailey next. Off-field issues aside, you guys can do your own research there. If you guys want to, I ended up making a post about it and put the research that I did myself. There's 2 really big red flag incidents. You guys can go check that out. But this is about his performance this past week, which was phenomenal. He had an 88 defensive grade, 8 pressures, 4 defensive stops. Also had a pass breakup, i.e. a batted ball, because he was not targeted. But David Bailey, I do think that the red flags are going to come out, which is why I'm having that projection be top 100. But I still really do love the talent on the field. It is also just a question of how much you should weigh off the field. Mason Posa is next, linebacker for Wisconsin. Very interesting player because he is supposed to come out in 2029. So he's, I believe, a true freshman. And this dude just balled the fuck out this past week. 79 defensive grade, 7 pressures, 3 of them being sacks, 5 defensive stops, a forced fumble, targeted once, allowing a reception for 15 yards. But talk about a more stacked game for someone who is in his first year. Big name to watch going forward. Huge fan of what we can end up coming out of that. Then we have Diego Pavia, quarterback for Vanderbilt. Obviously, I think he's in his 6th or 7th year of college, so definitely not somebody who's going to be drafted, but he's taken big strides this year, especially as a passer. Thrown the ball 33 times in his victory versus Auburn, 25 completions, 377 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 4 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays. Along with that, 17 carries, 114 yards, and a touchdown on the ground with 1 missed tackle forced. Talk about much better of a stat line. This is not against cupcake competition. This is against top-tier competition. Fantastic performance there for Diego Pavia. But we can't talk about Diego Pavia without talking about Eli Stowers, who back-to-back weeks have had elite performances, 15 targets, 12 receptions for 122 yards for a tight end. a gadget weapon, if you will. That is phenomenal. Then you got Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver from USC. This past week, 16 targets, 11 receptions for 161 yards and a touchdown. That's good enough to go on the full list, but maybe not the video. He also had a carry for 4 yards and a touchdown. So grand total, 12 touches, 165 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Amazing performance there from arguably probably a top 3 wide receiver in the class. I have him as my wide receiver 3, but at the same time, I mean, it's kind of hard to differentiate. There's so many damn good talents. Mekhi is just continuing to prove that he's going to be a top-tier talent in the NFL. Lee Hunter, defensive interior out of Texas Tech, is next. He had a 70 defensive grade, and this past week, he also had 7 pressures. If you guys are keeping track, that puts him as well as David Bailey together for 15 pressures together. Really good performance. Also, not to kind of slight Romello height at all, he ended up having a good performance as well. I believe he had 4 pressures himself. So really good performance in a huge game versus BYU. And BYU is not slouchy. When it comes to offensive line talent, they do compete. So continuing here, Zane Durant, defensive interior out of Penn State. We've been waiting for a little bit more production from him this past week. 70 defensive grade with 7 pressures and 3 defensive stops. And their loss to Indiana. But Mikhail Kamara on the other side, on the other team, I should say, ended up having a great week himself with a 72 defensive grade, 8 pressures, and a defensive stop. Penn State put up a really good fight. Indiana ended up having a strong finish. Speaking of strong finishes, pause. We have Ian Strong, wide receiver out of Rutgers. We mentioned Raymond earlier, and can't not mention Ian Strong. 5 receptions on 8 targets for 88 yards and a trio of touchdowns. So Philip Dunham with the 3 interceptions at the beginning. Then we have Ian Strong with the 3 touchdowns here in this portion. But then we also have Bud Clark, defensive back out of TCU. He's fluctuated up and down, but definitely has had enough really strong performances to garner legitimate NFL consideration. 79 defensive grade, 2 defensive stops, targeted 3 times, allowing 2 receptions for 35 yards and a pair of interceptions. Fantastic. Then we have Akeem Mesidor, edge rusher out of Miami. Ruben Bain is on the full list, but Akeem Mesidor, in my opinion, had a better performance. 87 defensive grade, 5 pressures, 4 stops, and a forced fumble. Ruben Bain technically had more pressures, but not that forced fumble. Keontae Scott as well, defensive back out of Miami. He popped off in person. 80 defensive grade, 2 pressures, a stop, targeted once, allowing 0 receptions, and got an interception and a pass breakup. So really good performance there for a top-tier defensive back. Then you got Traden Stukes, defensive back out of Arizona. 75 defensive grade, targeted 4 times, allowing 1 reception for 20 yards, and 3 pass breakups. Really good performances all around. It was to the point where players with 2 pass breakups, I would just kind of ignore because so many players were just having top tier performances. But we still have more guys on our stars of the week. It was a really good week, a very good week. Then we got Ashton Daniels, quarterback out of Auburn. Talk about being able to take over and challenge, and not it's 10 to 15 game, down to near 40s for each squad. Ashton Daniels, great performance there for Auburn. 31 completions on 47 throws, 353 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 2 big time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play, 15 carries, 104 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Did have a fumble and a missed tackle forced. So really good performance there for somebody who's transferring from Stanford. That's tough to do, man. Very tough to do. Mason Reiger, edge rusher out of Wisconsin, also pairing up here with Mason Posa on the list, his teammate from Wisconsin. 78 defensive grade, 8 pressures, and a stop. I mean, big game there versus Washington. Big game that they won. Heavily focused on the defense. Melkart Abu Jaude. Please tell me that I got that correct, because I can promise you I did not. Edge rusher out of UNC is next. 65 defensive grades, 6 pressures, 3 of those being sacks, and 3 defensive stops. So good performance there for him. Then we have the pair of Cal corners here in Brent Austin and Hezekiah Bassis. Hezekiah has been on this list several times. 78 defensive grade, a defensive stop, targeted 6 times for 2 receptions, 23 yards, and 3 pass breakups for Brent Austin. And then for Hezekiah Masses, a 72 defensive grade, a defensive stop, targeted 6 times as well, allowing 3 receptions for 13 yards, but an interception and a pass breakup. Huge performances from the Cal corners in a huge win. Avion Terrell, cornerback out of Clemson, is next. He's had some tough games in terms of the stat sheet, but if you use your eyeballs, you end up seeing that this guy ends up having really, really good performances, even when the stat sheet says maybe not so much. But this past week, it lined up. He had a 70 defensive grade with a pressure, and he had 7 targets his way. Guess how many receptions he allowed? 0. And a pass breakup. Fantastic performance there for Avion Terrell. Emma Johnson had a great performance as well for Nebraska. This dude's contact balance is insane. Somebody who needs to start being evaluated as maybe a top 5, if not top 3 running back in the class. I believe he's draft eligible. If he is. Big asterisk there. But 28 carries, 129 yards, and a touchdown on the ground with 2 missed tackles forced. Through the air, 3 targets, 3 receptions, 103 yards, and 2 touchdowns as well. Great performance there, as Nebraska ended up having a really surprise game and surprise win over UCLA. Also, that quarterback actually looking pretty good. Then we have UConn. Back on the list is Byron Parham. UConn ended up kicking some ass this past week. I don't know what's going on with that program, but they're doing some. They just beat Duke. Shout out to their quarterback too, Fagnano. He's somebody who's a 7th year. I think he might be 7th or an 8th year. But he has no interceptions on the year and has had 2 upset wins over pretty top-tier teams in both Boston College and Duke, comparatively to UConn. 75 defensive grade, though, for Byron. 3 pressures, 6 defensive stops, a forced fumble, 2 targets, 2 receptions for 16 yards, and an interception, I believe, off of a tip. So, really good performance as a pass rusher, run defender, as well as in coverage. Then you got Clev Lubin, edge rusher from Louisville. 79 defensive grade, 4 pressures and 6 stops, targeted 3 times, allowing 3 receptions for 10 yards, but we ain't caring about Caleb Lubin in coverage. 4 pressures and 6 stops is adequate. Then you got Jaden Roberts. I want to give him some credit. He ended up having a 90 pass blocking grade with 0 pressures allowed this past week. A big game versus a pretty top tier competition in Louisville. Really good performance there. But we talked about the good stuff. Let's talk about the bad. Garrett Nussmeier got his ass benched. Not good. He had 21 throws, 18 completions for 117 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 0 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play, 2 carries for 0 yards. Average depth of target was under 3 yards at 2.9. It was pretty obvious. He was being overly conservative. I think it was in the red zone. Bray Hubbard almost lurked him. That's the turnover-worthy play. So in the biggest moments, he ended up, and then the worst thing of all was, spinning directly into pressure and losing a shit ton of yardage. Bailed out by his kicker in making the field goal after that, but lost an enormous amount of yardage trying to be cute. And, he's not a great athlete. So when Yanze Pierre is bending the edge, step up, not try to bail out. And his big issue has been bailing out. When you're not a top tier athlete, probably not a good idea. So Garrett Nussmeier, looking very, very rough. Should definitely come out last year. Then you got Josh Hoover. So it's going to be a trio of quarterbacks in the duds of the week. But Josh Hoover, 50 throws, 34 completions, 319 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. You're like, that's not dud of the week. 0 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays. So very well could have ended up being a 319 yard, 1 touchdown, and 4 interception game. 1 carry for 11 yards as well in a pretty sad loss. Then we have Damond Williams. He's been on both sides of this. I think this guy's going to be really, really good. But a key loss this past week, and that kind of sucks. 33 throws, 20 completions, 133 yards at 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 0 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays, 91 yards on 14 carries, but 2 fumbles as well. Showing a lot of inexperience there. Wisconsin came to play. A lot of pressure in his face. It's not fully on Damond Williams at all, but just safe to say, not the performance that you're looking for, and pushed him, obviously, out of any sort of contention. Then, ending off this video, we'll talk about the rest of the guys for stock down. Micah Pettis has had a fantastic year, the right tackle out of Florida State. This past week was his first actually bad game. 45 pass blocking grade and 6 pressures allowed. Miller Moss, quarterback out of Louisville, is next. I get to see him in 11 days, I think. Whatever the hell, whenever they come to SMU. I'm like, what day is that? I think it's 11 days. But regardless, 39 throws, 20 completions, 203 yards, 0 touchdowns, an interception, 1 big-time throw, 2 turnover-worthy plays, 6 carries for 4 yards and a touchdown and a fumble as well, in a loss. So, again, when the rest of the team was actually performing pretty well, ended up, not having the statistical performance needed. Then you have DJ Lagway, quarterback for Florida. He got his ass benched too. Could have easily been on the duds of the week. 20 throws, 11 completions, 83 yards, a touchdown, 3 interceptions, 0 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays, 6 carries for 26 yards with 2 missed tackles forced. Loved seeing him push for the first down as well. He needs a transfer. He needs just a new scenery. See like what the hell happens. Honestly, wouldn't be the worst idea on planet Earth to see, because I think Florida is going to be trying to, get something. But if he does end up leaving University of Florida, I do think that South Carolina is going to make a very strong push after LaNorris leaves. And, Lagway has the potential to be able to fill in that role. We'll see. But interesting fit there. Drew Shelton, left tackle at Penn State, is next. He ended up having a pretty bad week. 4 pressures, 52 pass blocking grade in the loss to Indiana. Technically, Nolan Ricci, is also could be on this list, but he ended up being a little bit more efficient as a run blocker. Anthony Donko, 7 pressures, 28 pass blocking grade as a guard. We already talked about how Indiana's pressure was kind of through the roof. Rocco Best should have been on probably the duds of the week. He technically is, but like the super duds. 24 throws, 9 completions, 111 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, 0 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play, 4 carries for 33 yards. He's just like crumbling. I mean, statistically speaking, he's had some really bad games, obviously not ready to come out. Vincent Anthony Jr. is the edge rusher from Duke, ends on this list. They lost to UConn, and he ended up having a 61 defensive grade and only a defensive stop, and I believe over 40 reps, which is just bad. Wesley Williams had a really solid week. Vincent Anthony did not, and that's one of the reasons that they lost to UConn. Darian Mensah is next. I love Darian Mensah. I think he's a really good quarterback, but this week ended up showing some big cracks. 31 throws, 22 completions, 222 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 1 big-time throw, 3 turnover-worthy plays, 3 carries, 31 yards, and a fumble with a missed tackle forced. So he's young. I honestly would prefer to see him come out this year and just sit and develop for half of a year. That's just probably where my head's at with him based on what we see with some of these regressions. And I don't think Duke is the place to really show progression. Aaron Graves, defensive interior out of Iowa, is next. In their game this past week, he had a 40 defensive grade and only a defensive stop on, I believe, over 40 reps as well. Dante Moore, last but not least, he ended up having a fantastic final drive. But up until then, this team was on the ropes. On the ropes. Not a fan of that. 13 completions on 21 throws, 112 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, but 2 amazing throws on the big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays, 4 carries, 46 yards, and a fumble. Love that one stretch. He was a definition of highlight, fantastic. Overall game, worrisome. Don't want to see that. But Dante Moore still came out with a W. Just, again, him as well as Fernando Mendoza, both having their respective amazing streaks and also their moments where it's like, maybe stepping in right away isn't necessarily on the cards based on the inconsistency. But we'll see. Thank you again for watching. Showing the love you always do. I'll see you later. Peace.